noon, which is not the time I normally meet. So for those of you who've come over to join us, I had a lot of reaction to my posting. You were going to be here, Tim, but it takes a while for them to move in and get to be part of our space. I would like you to meet Tim Walter. He is joining us all the way from Yorkshire. And in case you're wondering about why aren't those bluebells behind her like she normally has, that's because we're in Yorkshire today. And this is Yorkshire Dales. Isn't that what it's called?
Yorkshire Dales. Excuse me. Yes, the Yorkshire Dales.
And it's a beautiful part of England. And if you've never been to England, people say, oh, I want to go to London. I want to do this. I just tell people to go to the city of York. To me, it's the best. If you want to see modern England, ancient England, medieval England, all in one place, you can even go into a museum that shows you Jorvik when it was the Norse capital. And that, to me, was one of the most fascinating museums I've ever been in my life. And how they found it and how they developed it. Of course, I have a friend in archaeology who said, you dig 2 feet anywhere in England, you're going to find something.
Yeah, I think that's true.
They've been there way too long. So we're starting to build up people. There's a couple things. Tim, do you want to introduce yourself quickly? And then I'm going to go over some terms I think might help people.
Okay, well, I'm Tim Walter. I'm a house healer and alternative life coach for Alternative Read Spiritual. I have I'll let Nancy Jean sort of suggest where my YouTube channel is, but some of you maybe have found that already. I've been doing house healing for about 13 years or so now, professionally. And so I help people move on from their blockages or from their unusual, unusual experiences that they might be having at home. So, or their place of work. That's the sort of thing. That's me, really.
Well, very good. And that's where, if you're going to have to sit in a house that's got something weird, you need Tim's your man. Tim's your man. And that's how to reach him, Tim Walter at nightrose.com.
Yep, that's it. Super, thank you.
You also wrote a book about all this wonderful stuff.
Yeah, well, there's Spirit on Earth, which was co-written with a good friend of mine, Adrian Ingleton-Weber. He's a house healer. And in fact, he was one of the people that taught me all those years ago. I also learned from my mentor, Hamish Miller, who maybe we'll touch on.
That's how I found Tim, was Hamish Miller's.
Yeah, Hamish, there's a wonderful video. I say it's wonderful, I made it, but it's a wonderful video because Hamish Miller is in it, where he talks about his near-death experience and he talks about his life. He's a fantastic guy, and he was really deeply involved in earth energy, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later on as well. So I recommend having a dip into that. And lots of folks there. There's lots of people saying hello, and I don't know how to. I can't type at the same time.
I do it. Thanks everybody for being here.
Great. Lovely.
And I'm going to put in Hamish Miller's name because Hamish. I'm sorry, I'm not. I'm
Hamish Miller.
Hamish Miller.
Hamish Miller. He was
Hamish
a Scot.
Miller is the guy. Yeah, banner. Show banner. And I'm going to. I just made us Hamish Miller. I didn't mean to do that. But anyway, that's the name. And he's the one who started you on your journey. And Hamish's life story. Did you do the YouTube video where he followed the chakras of the earth?
I made about 3 fairly long-running videos with Hamish, where he was. The first one we did together was called the Spirit of the Serpent. I can't remember what it was called. The Spirit of the Serpent, which was a 30-minute documentary about Hamish Miller and colleagues, friends of his, basically exploring the earth energy at the Merry Maidens, which is an ancient sacred site down in Cornwall. That was the first one. And then we made one about dowsing, and we made one about parallel community, which was something he was deeply involved with, very passionate about towards the end of his life. Those were the 3 main long form videos we made. There is another one that was made by Channel 4 over here in the UK.
That's the one, I think.
That's the one, which was actually about him. Literally, he was dowsing the Michael and Mary lines, which is what he was really well known for. And his book, The Sun and the Serpent, is the tale of him and Paul Broadhurst tracking the lines across the south of England. But that documentary made by Channel 4, I think it was in the late 80s. It is actually really worth dipping into if you can find it, because there are shots of Hamish with a really long dowsing rod, metal dowsing rod. He's driving and he's got the rod and he's dowsing at the same time as he's driving through these country lanes. It's hilarious.
Yeah, well, it is. And for those of you who don't, this is going to get into the terms before we get into what Tim does. Tim does dowsing, and these are dowsing rods. And you've seen me douse with these if you've watched very much. There may be some people who have absolutely no idea what the heck we're talking about. Dowsing can also be done with pendulums. And you do that when you do a lot of your house clearing work, I know.
Yeah. Either they're interchangeable, really. Dowsing rods are really, really useful for working outside, where a pendulum is going to get blown around by the wind. Dowsing rods will counteract the wind without any problem at all. A lot of people know dowsing as being the way of finding water. I had a comment the other day that was saying, I thought that was just for water. It's like, no, it's not. The old dictionary definition, it used to be in existence about 10 years ago. The dictionary definition of dowsing then was the art of finding hidden things. And that literally is it. It's that process of asking questions to get a yes or no response about absolutely any aspect of the unseen that we have in our world.
Yeah. So with that, he does dowsing, and we'll get into more of your house healing, and you talk about geopathic stress, which is where used for energy emanating from the earth that causes us problems.
Yeah, geopathic stress for me, I mean, in a lot of this sort of subtle energy world that we kind of deal with, spiritual and all this sort of thing, there's a lot of different interpretations of terms. And for me, geopathic stress is actually a collection of influences that we can be affected by. Some people go out and douse what they call geopathic stress lines. To me, that means they're dousing earth energy lines that are detrimental. They're out of sync with the people that are in the space. But geopathic stress is broadly a definition that is recognized in the dowsing community as people being affected by the subtle energy emanations from the environment in which they're either living or working.
Well, this lady is true. She knows exactly what it's like to live in a house like that. I did a long reading for her, and finally I said, there's something wrong with your land. And 4 psychics and 5 shamans later.
Yeah.
And she had I don't know what the British equivalent of it is, except you had a lot of battles on lands, but she had Native American battles on where she lived and stuff. She had a lot of that. So she lived in a place with geopathic stress. So these are things that exist across the globe, and we're going to talk to Tim now about this. Now we're going into the real interview I normally do, Tim, with the 20 questions.
Oh, okay.
When did you first realize that you might have psychic abilities?
Oh, gosh. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what used to happen, which was when I was teens. I used to have the occasional precognitive dream, but they were always really stupid things, like dreaming about having lunch and somebody walking through the door. And literally, that would happen 2 days later. The person that I dreamt about, I was sitting there eating exactly what I dreamt I was eating, and the person walked through the door, and that sort of thing. I never considered it to be psychic abilities. And I tend to not use the word psychic. I tend to use the word sensitive, but that's just a word. And I think really, I'm not sure that I ever really came to terms with it. In 2000-ish, my wife and I moved house, and that was our real kind of catalyst to starting on this journey. And I guess at some point in there, I started dowsing and realized that actually, okay, this must be what being a sensitive is about. So that would be that's 25 years ago. Okay. Is that 25 years ago? 1998, we moved into the house. Yeah, it is.
That's 27 years ago.
27 years, 25 years, yeah.
Did you have a single aha moment in that move, or did it just kind of build gradually over time?
No, we moved into this massive house, which was wonderful because we moved from the southeast of England, just south of London, which was really crowded and busy, and I'm doing my head in. And we moved across to the Welsh borders on the other side of the country, and the house was wonderful. It needed a lot of work, but there was a room out the back of it that was like, that really isn't a terribly pleasant space. Because it was used as a dumping ground. The previous owners had just dumped everything in. There was a storeroom, and it was terrible. As I learned later, there were people like my wife's mother wouldn't go in there. She just refused to go in there. And what was happening to me soon after we moved in the house was that I was seeing like dark figures out the corner of my eye, that sort of thing. They weren't disturbing me or anything. It was just like, oh, what was that? And we were getting the usual sort of thing of tools going missing, things that we were using, they would disappear and then reappear a couple of days later. And lights flickering, television being turned off, and radio, the CD player being turned off. One particular CD we never managed to play, actually. But we got builders in to do some work generally on the house, and actually it was one of the builders that recommended we had the house spiritually cleared. And I think it was that phrase that was the first time that I would have heard that expression. So didn't know what it was, but we had 3 dowsers turn up to kind of investigate what was going on, and that's when we found out we had spirit of a lady that was trying to make contact with us, living in the house. And her words were, through these dowsers, I just want to be part of the family. So that's what we did. We said, well, okay, well, fine, great. We haven't got a problem with her being here. And that's why I learned to dowse, so that I could speak with her.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
See, guys, so if you live in a haunted place, it may not be, the first thought should not be send them away.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if I may, it is actually a really interesting point, because often the catalyst for our spiritual development starts as something that we think is really spooky, really scary. And of course it can be. I mean, it can, but that catalyst can be the launch pad for something absolutely amazing as you follow it. And as you just go with what occurs. And, if you've got professionals coming in to help you in any sense, in terms of coming to terms with that, then go with it and just, experience it and try not to be too spooked by it. But I do recognize that some of them can be really scary.
Oh, well, you're sitting at home, you're not expecting anybody else to be there.
No,
all
exactly.
Of a sudden, what?
Yeah.
How did people around you react when you started sharing your experiences?
I was very, very, very cautious about sharing my experiences. And one of the reasons was that I have a brother that's 2 years older than me. And at the time that we were moving house, that 1998 period, so mid to late 90s, my brother actually was, how would I put this? He began suffering from bipolar syndrome, but nobody realized. And effectively, he had a breakdown, and he was actually sectioned under the Mental Health Act. And that sectioning occurred a little bit before we moved into the house. So, bless him, he's fully recovered now. It's all managed and all the rest of it. But it was significant for me because, for a start, when we started having these experiences, I thought, I think I'm losing it. Like,
this runs in the family,
Yeah, exactly. And so even when I was having conversations with the guardian energy there, as we learned that that's what she was, and her name was Jane, that's what we referred to her as I was, going about the process of dowsing and talking with her, I did frequently think, I think I am going insane. So I didn't want to share that. I didn't want to share this experience with people. As it turned out, as I gradually told 1 or 2 people, I mean, my father reacted very strangely. It was like, yeah, well, cool, that sounds amazing, Tim. That's really interesting. Don't tell your mother. And I thought, well, that's a bit odd. I don't know why he said, don't tell your mother, but that's fine. I told my mother anyway. And she was like, oh, that's great. Oh, that's really interesting. Don't tell your father. And so it was like, what? So I never got to the bottom of what that was about, but they were just concerned for each other. So there was a lot of this concern. And of course, in the back of their minds was the fact that, well, is Tim going the same way as, his brother? But as I gently kind of got more used to talking to people about its friends and stuff, what surprised me was actually people were really interested, and they didn't sort of shout and throw stones and run me out of town. It was like, well, tell us more. What's going on there? What's that all about? And, oh, I know somebody that happened to, blah, blah, blah. So there was all of this kind of, oh, yeah, oh, you know about this stuff. Oh, let's just share experiences. And I didn't expect that at all. So, yeah.
Well, in England, I think they're a little more hardwired to expect that. You may not, you haven't lived over here. You haven't lived over here.
No, that's true.
But when I was in England and I met one of my sister-in-laws, she lived in a tiny little village out in York, in the Yorkshire area. And she was from the Wise Old Women family. Her family was the ones that had lived on the cottage on the edge of the woods. She'd go out and she'd carry a basket with her and pick up the herbs and the plants she knew healed people. We had people coming. We stayed at her house for like 4 days. There are people coming all the time to get the medicines. And she actually had a bottle of a package of big brown bottles like pharmacists use. And I had arrived there with bronchitis and it was really bad. And she said, drink half of this tonight and drink the other half tomorrow, and you'll be okay by tomorrow afternoon. And I thought, I don't want to insult my hostess. So I drank it. And then the next day I felt so much better. And by noon, and when I finished the other half of that bottle, I was up and running. I've never had anything heal me that quickly. So she took me out into the woods and showed me, and she would talk to me about the plants and, oh, we don't harvest this one this time of year. And this was her whole family origin. She never had a daughter to pass that to.
Oh.
So it died out, but she'd been the wise. So I think my experience with British is they're a little more tolerant.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because most of my clients for house healing or mentoring or the house healer training actually are from outside of the UK. Yeah. So,
right. We all see it from our own mirror, right?
We absolutely 100%.
Did you seek training or did you find it on your own path?
Mostly it's been my own path. About a year ago, I connected up to some old school friends of mine, right? This will give you a background about how I treat things. These were school friends that I last saw when I was about 16 or 17. Okay. And suddenly at 60 something, these people appear. So I've joined a WhatsApp group. And I said to the guy that contacted me in the first place, I said, yeah, I was really antisocial at school, wasn't I? And he says, no, I wouldn't say that, Tim. No, independent. Right. So everything that I do tends to be like, I think I want to do this my way. I want to prod this and see what happens. What does that mean? And that's just me. I'm very insular in that sense. I'm a classic introvert, and I like to do stuff my own way. So I've sort of self-taught.
And are there any specific tools that became part of your practice early on?
What are them?
Dowsing rods.
Yeah, dowsing rod and pendulum. It took me years actually to learn how to use the pendulum. But dowsing rod and pendulum, and what let's think back to the early days. No, that they were. What really fascinated me very early on was not so much the tools, not the implements, not the charms and all the rest of it, because what fascinated me was the nature of reality. Because of my brother's breakdowns and what was happening there, what I was fascinated by was the question of what does this mean about reality? And so as soon as I got into earth energy with the dowsing and that sort of stuff, what really drew me was what is going on at these sacred sites. And
Mm-hmm.
then through Hamish, so Hamish there was a huge amount of learning that I got, by osmosis, if you like, and in friendly teaching from Hamish, formal teaching from Adrian Ingleton Weber later on the house healing, but from Hamish at that time, learning more about earth energy and how that interacts with us and our awareness and our perceptions. That taught me a huge amount, and that's what I really loved. So really the tools weren't so important to me, but the dowsing rod and the pendulum, especially the dowsing rod to start with, because I would go all over the place exploring sacred sites.
And you can see it. I think for people who keep saying, well, you see it in the cards, but you've learned all the cards. But when you put a rod in their hand and it moves yes and no for things, I think it's a much more physical experience for people.
I think it's a terrific tool,
Yeah.
and that's why I go on about it so much on my channel, because it's brilliant for opening the door. Because it's, I mean, for men in particular, I mean, a lot of women do it, but a lot of women are so naturally sensitive that they're not drawn to, okay, let's go with this and see what happens. But for men in particular, it's really useful to be able to do something. And obviously on the spiritual path, we're really trying to learn to experience things by just being and relaxing and allowing. But in the early days, having a dowsing rod and getting confirmations of what you're getting and developing your own intuitive connection in the way that I did with Jane, learning to have conversations and to listen and to hear her, it was incredibly helpful.
Jane, for those who don't know, because you didn't say her name, that was the spirit in the house you moved into.
Yeah. And as she turned out to be, she was a guardian of the energy in that house. So she was far more than just a ghost. Yeah.
Do you have any mentors and teachers other than Jane?
Well, in spirit world, yes, constant supply of different spirits, spirit guides that seem to change as one changes. I think that applies to everybody. I don't have real world mentors.
Okay, so if you're solidly here, for some people, that's the way it goes. Other people come to me, and one of the things that was a catalyst for doing this series was, well, who can I study with and where can I learn? And that's not how I learn, but there are ways to do that. You just have to open your mind up to it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very comfortable. Well, as I just said, learning on the doing the tasks and learning that way, and being instructed and guided by that energy that is there. It's just as absolutely as you say. One sort of learning suits one sort of person, and that's as it goes, as with everything. Sorry, I will just say this. The uniqueness of our experience is the thing that really fascinates me. And this is why I will always be found talking about the idea that we do live in our own unique universe. And the components of that unique universe are absolutely dependent on the uniqueness and the individual human being at the humanistic level. But obviously that funnels down or up into the soul energy that is incarnate and is within us all the time anyway. So it's the uniqueness of the experience, and that applies across the board to absolutely everything, not only to what we like to eat, but to the way we learn. So yeah.
Okay. How did you learn the difference between psychic impressions and your imagination?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. I remember attending a class. I did attend a class, one or two of them. Yeah. I was in a remote viewing class, and I went up. It was being run by a guy called Professor Peter Stewart. He's no longer with us. He was a very experienced dowser, one of the British Society of Dowsers. And he used to be really keen on remote viewing. And we had an exercise, and I went up to him after this exercise, and I said, Peter, how do you tell the difference between imagination and what you're given? And he said, feel it. I said, oh, and he said, yes, you feel that you can feel being given, and you can feel the created when you're imagining, and it really does go the other way. That's the way I experience it, and to me that was one of the most important lessons. But also, it's useful to know and notice that, because it's not about shunning the imagination, because it's really useful to be able to imagine, because what that's doing is actually kind of exercising the connection. Because the more one imagines, the more one allows one's imagination to go and to visit and to explore, then actually what you're doing is opening up the possibilities for information to come in to that same tube, if you like. So that's what I actually sometimes encourage people to use their imagination. And it shouldn't be forgotten that the imagination carries an energy. And so when we visualize, we are effectively connecting into the subtle energy and utilizing the same sort of frequencies that we do when we are given information too. That's as far as I'm concerned.
Well, my second husband was a physicist, and he had pioneer patents in physics in microcircuitry. And he created an epoxy with another guy that they could put on the outside of microchips so that the microchips could go into outer space. Because before that, if they put a microchip up in the space, the solar winds just burnt it up.
Right.
And I was talking to him one day, and he was talking about how I can see things and know things. He said, all of a sudden one day, he and I just knew that we could take these elements and put them together and seal these chips, and it would work. And he said there wasn't anything, there was certain level of knowledge that would let you, but it was like a new thing. So he had the pioneer. Folks, do not think it made me gazillions of dollars. He worked for a corporation that owned every thought he ever had.
Yeah.
But he said, I could have said, oh, we're imagining it and blown it off. But he said, I just knew this would work. And when he was on his deathbed and he was dying of cancer, I said, looking back on your life, is there really anything? I'm a really rude person. Is there anything in your life that you really, really regret? And he goes, that damned epoxy. I hate cell phones. So, all right, guys.
Okay.
So that's imagination and
just as a quick aside, Nancy Jean, you talking about outer space there. The thing that I find equally hilarious and fascinating is that the wheels on the Mars Explorers, the width of those wheels, the guy that was responsible for designing that part of the Explorers, he doused to find what's the width that those wheels should be, because they knew very little about the surface and what they were going to encounter. So those wheels were doused.
Well, that's brilliant. Way cool. That's way cool.
Yeah.
Okay, now challenges and breakthroughs. Have there ever been a time when you really kind of doubted yourself, and how did you push through that?
Well, I've been doing this work for professionally for 13 years. So if you do the maths, 13 times 365, I probably doubt myself every day. That's the honest truth. There's part of me that 0.000% probably, but I doubt all the time. And actually, I think a healthy dose of doubting is actually quite useful, but it's no use if you succumb to it and you just dive into it and think, oh, I'll give this up and walk away, obviously. And because the most important thing in all of this work is actually the depth of belief. And really, what we do when we doubt, we're asking questions about, oh, well, does that work? Is that really right? Do I really think that? Blah, 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 explore. What you're really doing, what you're really doing is actually confirming and reaffirming your own belief. And belief has the energy that is, because, it's faith, right? So to me, doubting is not a problem. But when we have big doubts, and I think one of the biggest doubts I had was a few years ago when I thought, because I do a lot of house healing, what we're doing is we're basically opening up to the management, as we call them, or I tend to refer them now as the higher beings. So higher energies, higher beings. We're opening up to the higher beings. And the idea is that we're allowing the higher beings to do the energy rebalancing work on the features that are detrimental within a house. We use a floor plan, we douse the floor plan, we ask the higher beings what needs to change, right? So we're asking the higher being what needs to change. And they tell us, that needs to change. Oh, okay. So, and then we sit in the meditative state and do the healing work. In other words, we allow them to access to do that, right?
Mhm.
Now, some years ago, I thought, hang on, if we're asking them what the issue is, why don't they just fix it? Right? So, okay, because it's like, what? Why do we need to be doing anything here? There's a process. Why don't you just cut out the middleman or the middle person? Now, and that was actually for me a big problem, because that doesn't make sense to logic. It doesn't make sense. But of course, we're not dealing with logic. We're dealing with intuitive, subtle energy. What we're actually dealing with, as I figured out in the end, was our role as the house healer is to simply act as that point of awareness in this vibration. So we are that pivoting point on the seesaw, or whatever you want to call it, that fulcrum. We are that point, or we're that doorway, we're the portal to allow that to take place, that two-way interchange of information. Yeah, I mean, if we weren't here, if the human species wasn't here, and there was still work to be done within a dimension that was similar in density to this, they would find a way. There would be a species that did it. But, at the moment, it's the human beings, and that's fine. So I guess that I kind of broke through that particular barrier through logic and talking to upstairs. It's very obvious, really,
Well,
but sometimes we get lost in it.
You've got to open. I keep telling people, especially when my least favorite question recently has been, what do my guides want me to know? Well, they're your damn guides. I mean, you talk to them. No offense, but they are. And, and that's how we learn, and that's how we improve. And when each of us gets to a point where we can talk more closely to our guides and to our mentor or the higher management or whatever you want to call it that's over us, then the faster we're going to move ahead.
Yeah, and this is part of that whole concept of the person living in their own universe. The guides, everybody's individual personal guides are there actually as a part of their individual unique universe. They are personal, and they are actually a part of us, and we are a part of them. I mean, clearly they're not a part of us at the physical level, but this is just the blobby bit at the end of that whole scale of vibrations that come down into the physicality. So yeah, there is no each person is on their individual unique path, and the guides are there for a reason, and they're called guides for that reason.
That's
Speak
right.
to them, talk to them, ask them.
My guides pushed me around for years. When I finally got their names in my early 60s, and I met her in a meditation, and I talked to Addie, and I said, well, I'm sorry I didn't go looking for you earlier, talking to you and everything. She said, it's okay. You did everything I told you you're supposed to do.
Yeah, well, quite exactly. Yeah,
she had no gripes with me. She didn't need to make herself known.
It's an interesting one, because the going back to this kind of nature of reality that we live in as human beings, our consciousness in the different levels is an integral part of that experience. And so obviously what we experience as a human being is our conscious awareness, but our subconscious is absolutely really in control of what we experience in the conscious state, and our guides are all in there interconnected with our subconscious. So the philosophical question, don't want to get too heavy, but the philosophical question of is there free will is highly debatable, but we have to live it that we have free will. But quite frankly, our experience is what the guides would want us to be experiencing, but also they will put points in there to say, look, come on, okay, let's make some conscious decisions in here, because we grow from our conscious decisions, right? So their presence is always fluctuating between the subconscious and the conscious, and they know damn well what our path is and what we've agreed to before we come down here. So sometimes those things are put in our awareness, in our conscious awareness, like living in a haunted house or a troubled house. It's catalyst.
An energetic house.
Yeah, energetic house.
Okay, how do you handle skepticism from yourself and others? And I know you had to come up. Tim and I have a similar background. I had a degree in broadcast film, and I worked on creating videos and working with PBS and stuff. And trust me, that is a powerhouse for you to learn how to push for your idea no matter what anybody else says. Because at the time you're talking to these people, I see this putting together this way, and they don't. And I'm sure you ran into that in that world.
To a certain extent, although I, quite frankly, I mean, I was, I don't know how long I was involved in all of that side of things. Don't know, I'm not even trying to put years on it. But quite frankly, my, how do I put this? I wasn't terribly successful in that arena, Nancy Jean.
Neither was I. I only stayed for 4 years and then got pregnant and had kids. So
yeah, well, I couldn't get pregnant, but we had I was pitching the spirit of the serpent,
mm-hmm.
yeah, that's the one, a lot to the broadcasters, and in those days. So we're talking 2003. It was just like, nope, mm-hmm. That's, and then even the religious people, the commissioner for religion and whatever, it's like, no, can't do that. That's pagan. No, can't do that. And it's like, I kept tweaking the pitch, and it wouldn't go anywhere. Sorry, what was your actual question? It's lost.
How do you handle skepticism from yourself or others?
Skepticism. Well, I was asked 18 months or so ago to respond to a journalist. A journalist approached me to talk about geopathic stress and house healing, and his pitch was that he was going to be publishing something it was one of the big papers in the States. I don't think it was the New York Times, but it was something like that. And I just said to him, right, okay, so I'll take part in this. I'll answer your questions as long as you don't paint me as a snake oil salesman. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, there is a danger. And I said, well, okay, I'll just tell you what the truth is and what my truth is, and see what happens. Mm-hmm. And actually, he was quite he was quite sympathetic to what I was saying for him. But the final article, which did not go in the paper that he was trying to get it to because they rejected him, but he went into a lesser paper, can't even remember what that was, and it was what you'd expect. It was like, yeah, this guy is taking people for a ride and there's no such thing as such and such and all of this. And it was like, yeah, that's a shame. So how do I treat it? Well, I've come across, do you know what? Don't think this will be offensive to anybody that's watching this. Some people that have very strong religious beliefs.
Oh, you're safe on my channel when you're talking about that.
Very concerned about this sort of thing because they don't understand it. Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't fit into their religious structures that they are quite rightly very protective of, then mm-hmm. they can get very upset. I mean, as you know, people will get really upset and angry about things that they don't understand, especially spirituality that mm-hmm. is so personal. So if they feel in any way that their personal stuff is being insulted or being threatened, they get really upset. Mm-hmm. And cynics basically fall into that camp. So I have encountered various religious-driven people that, mm-hmm. Really don't like what I'm doing. Some of them I can talk to them and just express things in their vocabulary, mm-hmm. and they will go away being very, that's interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. I hadn't seen it like that. Some of them are like, no, you clearly are working for the devil, and do mm-hmm. not talk to me again. So that's up to them.
Well, it is. And, since I don't believe there's a devil, I don't know how I could possibly be working for him or her.
Exactly. Quite.
Okay. Have you gone through weaker and stronger phases, and could you align it to like elements moving around in your life at the time?
Do you mean in the sensitivity?
Spiritual, yeah. Like some days I wake up and I don't feel like being sensitive.
Oh, heavens. I mean, I was talking to my guide just yesterday, and it suddenly occurred to me. I said to him, "Oh, we haven't spoken for a while," and he
Mm-hmm.
was like, "No, we haven't. No, well,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I really should. Yeah, I should talk to you more often. Yeah, like I used to."
Mm-hmm.
No, it fluctuates, and my guide. I mean, Jane was there in the house, and she's now part of my healing team. There's a team of
Mm-hmm.
guides and energies that work there, or I ask their assistance to take part. But there was a period in my life where I had another guide who was a very, very, very different energy, and he turned up and was present, and then he went away, and then I met this particular guide of my own personal guide, and turned out he was the same. It was the same guy. So he appeared in the house.
They have
And
different names in different places.
yeah, well, and this guy is well. He didn't have a different name. He actually had the same name because it was Merlin. And
Okay.
but I refused to recognize him as that because I
Okay.
said that's ridiculous. You can't. I'm not calling anybody Merlin because I don't believe that there was a Merlin. The more I researched into it, I found that there probably was a guy that was probably linked into it. And then, of course, Merlin has become this archetypal energy within the collective unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
But so when I was working with that particular guide, because I did say, yes, I want to work with you. And I did go to meet, I learned, oh yeah, there's some more learning there. You see, I'd forgotten about
Mm-hmm.
that when you asked me the question about training and learning. I learned very specifically from a spirit medium to channel that particular guide and
Mm-hmm.
would go into trance and channel him. And I did a lot of blog posts years ago based on those channelings. And so that was a phase in my life where he was incredibly present and incredibly so. I mean, his energy was so strong, and it would come in from this side, literally, because I'd learned to work with him like this. I could literally feel him filling my space, and then he would talk in this really rather grand way, and then he would exit. So that was a really interesting time in my life. He moved away. He's still present, but I don't feel those energies like that. It's a very different kind of feeling. But I expect these things to change
Mm-hmm.
because that's part of what we are. Life is not. There's nothing in life that remains the same. So we can't expect our spiritual development to
Mm-hmm.
stay static.
Right.
So it's always going to change. Guides are going to change. Energies are going to change. The way you feel are going to change. And environmental energies are going to change. Even the solar
How
energies
do
are
you
changing.
how do you protect your energy?
I wear things like that.
Okay.
But I also do what we call a chakra protection exercise, which is to go through and put a filter in place. I do that on a
Mm-hmm.
regular basis. But I'm constantly clearing this office. I'm constantly clearing this space because of the way that I work with clients. So
Mm-hmm.
when I'm working either one-to-one doing the mentoring or the house healing or just working with other people's energy, I prepare for that. I meditate and open
Mm-hmm.
up to be connected for those
Right.
people. And if I'm doing the house healing work, then clearly, absolutely, I want to be as prepared and as optimized as possible in connecting to that universal compassion that is there for everybody. So I do that process, and then I will close down and clear thoroughly every time. It's not an option as far as I'm concerned. It's just not an option. It's part of the way
It
to work.
freaks me out. I've interviewed a couple readers. Oh, I don't have any clearings, and I'm like,
I
I couldn't believe it. But I think they just do it innately. They learned it somewhere
yeah.
along. How has your work changed your worldwide view and your beliefs about life and death? We're in the easy questions now.
Let's take that. That's fine. Let's take that. Just tell me if I go too deep on this one, right? Because let's take that one bit at a time. So the first bit was how has your belief changed your outlook on life? I think is broadly what you said in the first bit of that.
Mm-hmm.
So there is not a single thought that I have these days or a feeling that I have these days that is the same as what I used to have before I encountered Jane and started on this path. There is nothing about me that is the same. I used to be incredibly depressed, and I mean clinically depressed. Early 20s, I probably was verging on being an alcoholic. Prior to that, I had almost killed myself because I just hated the world so much and was completely lost. So from that darkness, you go to, come on, guys, this is an amazing place. This is simply amazing. It is just unbelievably clever the way this reality is put together and why it's put together. And I mean, I've got a few notes that I'll take back upstairs when I go to say, look, really, does it have to be like that? But you know, it is an amazing experience being alive. So in that sense, it's a complete 180 or 360 reversal. Sorry, remind me of the other bits of the question.
Oh, it was just that has that have changed your belief about death?
Yeah. Yeah. I was brought up in a C of E church, so Jesus and the idea of
Which
life.
church? The Church of England?
Church of England, yeah,
Okay.
Church of England, C of E. Yeah.
You got other churches there, you know.
Yeah. We got Methodist Church, and we got Baptist Church, and we got the Catholic Church, and we've got all of those. But so I was brought up with this idea of God and life after death and all of that, and angels and all that stuff. Didn't sink in. I didn't really understand it. And I found, you know, as a child, church was intensely boring. So, you know, it didn't really sink in. Now I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever that, you know, we continue in a different vibration, and death is a doorway that we pass through, or a doorway that we step through, and that is 100%. It is what it is, and that makes a lot more sense of what this experience is about. Because without understanding the continuity of life, this experience here doesn't make a lot of sense.
Okay, that's kind of how I feel about it too. And I know now you did really work in media, because I remember being that kind of depressed.
Yeah.
What are the more powerful readings you've ever done? And why did you think it was memorable?
Readings are not readings. I would translate to house healing, shall we say? Yeah, and I think actually it was a recent one where I was working. A father had asked me to do some work on their house for their son, who was an adult but was psychotic and an addict. Now, I would love to say that the work that we did meant that he went skipping off into the sunset a happy bunny. That wasn't the case. But what it did was to actually cleared his state of awareness, helped the father hugely as well. But it meant that he could then seek mainstream medical help,
Right.
whereas beforehand, not a chance, not a chance. And so over the years, I've had some success with people with bipolar, and have had quite remarkable, you know, kind of like doctors are saying, well, how did he get like that suddenly, you know, improved? So that's happened, and those have been amazing. And you know, somebody that was so psychotic as this youngster was, no, it was a challenge. I felt to take it on, but also in experiencing that, I learned a lot about different levels of energy. And although we both agreed that there is no devil, there are certainly entities that we would call demons.
Oh, there's darkness.
And yeah,
we'd have no light.
And so dealing with this guy, accessing that level of darkness, and to have it embodied present here, was a first. And you know, it's like, okay, I get this, I understand, right? This is XYZ what we have to do. But yeah, that was from the humanistic perspective, that was quite extraordinary.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're going into advice from Tim. What advice would you give someone who's just starting to explore their gifts?
Take it gently. Take it gently, because you know, this is all called subtle energy, but the impact of it can be far from subtle. Now, sometimes people's spiritual awakening occur. We've talked about people that have got particular houses that are giving them trouble, but sometimes their spiritual awakening can hit them like a steam train and completely knock them off their reality. And that can take a lot of recovering from. It can give them bipolar, it can give them psychosis for a short term, all of those things. And in fact, a lot of people these days are waking up with such abruptness that actually their symptoms are briefly like being psychotic. So I've actually got a book coming out in November, just to drop that into the conversation.
Oh, well, we'll have you back on. You can explain that again then.
Okay. And that the emphasis in that book is to take people on a gentle spiritual path of development. It's basically following the same sort of path that I did, dowsing earth energy, spirits, blah, all of that sort of stuff. But the point that I make in that repeatedly is just be gentle, take it easy, don't force yourself, and don't go anywhere that you feel like, oh, I've got to be brave and do this. Don't push yourself like that. Don't be foolhardy. You know, and for heaven's sake, don't ever take advice from anybody, and including me. If you think what I'm talking about is it doesn't feel right, don't do what I suggest. Don't do it. Go by your heart. The heart is your best guide for your physicality, and just take it one step at a time.
Okay. And do you have daily habits you recommend, or something you do on a daily or ever so often?
Well, the chakra protection exercise that I mentioned earlier on is something that I recommend to people to do daily. And that literally is an exercise using the colors of the chakras, bringing them in, filling your body and energy, and putting them out as a kind of a filter. And that is a really lovely thing to do. It's a really helpful thing to do. It's also a grounding process. So that I recommend. It's on my channel. There's a couple of versions of it on the YouTube channel. But also meditation, really. You know, I don't meditate every day, but I miss it if I don't do it. And meditation really does form the bedrock of all of this interaction with the subtle energies.
Yeah, and you don't have to meditate forever. If you can do 5 minutes when you're starting out, you're doing good.
Yeah.
You know, and anyway, and how can anyone find a trustworthy psychic community or a mentor? And you kind of addressed that in the last one.
You really just need to follow your heart. You know, you can explore, see who you find, see who you come across, see who comes to you, but always follow your heart.
Okay. And what's the biggest lesson you've learned in your psychic journey? This is the easy one, right?
Is it? What is the biggest lesson I have learned in my psychic journey? I'm not sure I can answer that. I must be able to answer that. That's crazy. The biggest lesson. Oh. Okay. Well, we'll go with that one, which is even though you've got guides and they will give you advice, like if you ask a question of, if I do this, will it kill me? Remember to follow it up with, okay, if I do this, how badly will I be affected? Right? So, yeah, I made a decision a few years ago, let's say around about 5 years ago, which I am not proud of. It taught me some lessons in many different ways, but I'm not going to go into the details of those lessons.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Well, Lauren Hunsinger said she's enjoying this time we've had together. And Christy Storms, who absolutely understands living in a house with guests you didn't invite, said this is very fascinating. And we've had a lot of other people say how wonderful you are. I'm going to put up again the information on how to find Tim. This is his email, and he has a membership thing, which I was a member of, and then I changed debit cards and he got axed. So I'm going to today re-sign up for Tim's, because his stuff's fascinating. If nothing else, you get to roam the Yorkshire countryside with him while he walks around, which is interesting. And I've learned a lot from him about dowsing, but there's also a book you can get. If you go to my website, crystaldirections.com, you can go into the resources guide, and there's a free Letters to Robin, which is a dowsing book, and it's about 80 pages long, and it was written by the guy who was the head dowsing person in the US. So it's written in American English, and it kind of covers, but it does pendulums, it explains the rods. Tim has books that do that. Go to Tim's books for that. But
Better
I
to
really,
go to the web to chat the YouTube channel. Sorry to interrupt your
what?
flow. The YouTube channel's better place for the learn to douse stuff.
Okay. And that's at nightrose, right? .com.
Yeah, just yeah, do a search on my name, Dowser House Healer, Tim Walter, Dowser or House Healer.
Right, and you'll find him. And I want to thank everybody who came to watch us today. I realize we're at an odd time, but it's 6 p.m. in England and noonish here. And Tim was kind enough to come on and be with us. But really do consider looking at his channel if you're interested in geopathic stress. It's one of the few. We don't have a lot of channels on this side of the ocean that really speak to this subject. And so I'm hoping people will come over and find you, Tim. And I enjoyed again speaking with Tim. It's always delightful. And I thanks everyone who showed up. And if you like this show, share it with a friend. If you think, I know a friend who could really use that kind of information, share it with them. And also go back and like. YouTube's getting real picky about how well they will spread the word on my channel. And so I really need every like and every share I can get. They're being that way again. Anyway, everyone take care, and thank you, Tim, once again for being here. Goodbye.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.